I'll just
Sure.
say, first of all, welcome everyone to this Ask Me Anything AMA session. John and I are really excited to be doing this today, and we're looking forward to your questions and an interactive uh, hour with you today. I'm Amy Rudersdorf. I'm the Director for Consulting Operations at AVP. I've been with AVP for almost a decade and in this space for nearly two. So I have some opinions about the questions that we've already received and that we're going to get during the session today. John.
Good morning, good afternoon, good day. There's people from all over the place attending. My name is John Horodisky. I'm a managing director here at AVP. I've been here for about 4 months now, but equally, I have been in that damn space for over 2 decades. So equally, I also have opinions, educated opinions, opinions with experience behind them. And we are excited because we received some of the questions. Good questioning, everyone. And we are super excited to get the live questions as well. So please, in the Q&A box, please enter your questions in, and we will show them in the Q&A. So when we do answer, you'll see what we're doing. But yes, please ask questions.
All right, and I'm just going to do a quick what is this that we're doing today? So first of all, again, thank you. We're glad you're here. If you are here, the chances are you already know that dam selection is complicated and that it's not just about comparing product features or costs. It's about aligning technology with your workflow, with your people, and your long-term goals. And that can get complicated pretty quickly. So there are a ton of vendors out there, and each one sounds like they can do everything. But what really matters is what do you need? What will actually work in your context and for your team and your content and your users. So I also want to say that, this is where people bring in consultants because the right partner can help clarify your needs. We can run efficient and transparent processes. And I think most importantly, we make sure you don't just pick a dam, but pick one that works for you. So today, we're here to answer your questions, as we already said. And whether you're just starting to explore dams or you're deep in an RFP, and if you are, I'm happy to help. But if you're feeling overwhelmed, no problem. No question is too big or too small. And I promise you're not the only one wondering it. So as John said, ask your questions in the Q&A and feel free to upvote other people's questions. So let's jump in.
Do we have a poll question to start us?
Mm-hmm.
We do. There it is. Well done.
So the question is, where are you in your dam selection process? And I think you can just go ahead and vote, and then we'll see the responses.
No, we need one, but we haven't taken any steps. We have the approval, but don't know what to do next. That happens a lot. Writing an RFP needs some help. That happens every day. I've seen some demos, but don't know which to choose. I don't know where I am or what I'm doing. Help equally also a good answer to that. I'm curious to see where everyone's going to land. I'm going to say the first three-ish. Ish.
I'm not going to even guess.
Not going to guess?
No. All right. Do we see the results?
We should.
Okay. So people are still voting. All right. Oh, it's a pretty fair spread.
Interesting.
Just
Okay,
looking at
so
the answers here.
we have 225s. We have the approval, but we don't know what to do next. First of all, congratulations on getting approval.
Yeah, for
And then the
sure.
second one, we've seen some demos, but don't know which to choose. Good one. I don't know where I am. Okay,
Well, hopefully, for those who have no idea where they are, we can help you today.
Yeah.
And I know too that if you've seen dam vendor demos, your head may be swimming from all the possibilities, and so hopefully we'll jump into a little of that today too. So
thank you for participating in that. That does help us better understand who potentially all of you might be and where you are in your dam journey. That's interesting. Okay.
Yeah, we're going to do one more poll now, and that one is about how you're feeling about the selection process. So lost in the sauce, confident, it's easy peasy, stressed out, overwhelmed, meh. This is a very scientific poll.
Totally. This one, I see a lot of overwhelmed sometimes. I see
And
some
maybe lost in the sauce.
lost in the sauce. You know, after a while, after many demos, Amy, you're like, it looks the same. Is it the
Yeah.
same? Different colors. So lost in sauces, overwhelming. What do you think?
I would also say that if you're in the middle of writing an RFP, you may be in the meh category.
Hmm.
RFPs aren't the most exciting things to write, but they're so important in your selection process. All
All
right,
right.
let's see. Stress out. All right, we're going
Stressed
to try to,
out.
yeah, that's,
Okay.
yeah. Okay. So we're going to try our best to
De-stress.
reduce your, yeah, exactly.
We're all about positivity here at AVP. So let's de-stress on this morning, afternoon, evening, wherever you are in the world today. Less stress, right?
All right. Well, should we jump into, we have some questions already. I see there's some in the Q&A. Should we hold off on those and answer one of the questions we got before the webinar, and then we can jump to the Q&A questions?
For sure.
All right. So, John, I know I need a dam, but how do I start?
And everyone can see that. So if you go to the chat, you can see the questions that are being asked. So Brittany is posting those. So that is very good. I know I need down, but where do I start? Oh, golly. Well, the good news is you are already at that first step. You know that you need a dam. And that's actually, in some ways, it's almost like congratulations, you know that part. But then what? So what is, where do you start? What are those next things? Well, there are a few important things you do need to do. But first and foremost, I would love to know, do you have a business case for your dam? Like, do you have, you need it, but do you actually have the business case? So some things that we would like to encourage you to think about is, do you know why you need a dam? Yes, there are many good reasons, and every one of you might have similar ones and different ones, but why do you need the dam? Who is the dam for? I can tell you throughout my career, and Amy, you have similar experiences, people may have bought or and are looking for something that is for the wrong person, people's departments, regions, etc. So make it very clear. Who is this dam for? Why do you need it? And then who is it for? Then you start thinking about some beginning steps. Where are your assets? And sometimes it could be in one place, sometimes it could be in multiple places. Do you know how and when you might do the dam? Is this, I want one by summertime? I want one by 26. Better answer, by the way. Do you know your dam problems? Do you know what the issues that have gotten you to the step of where you are now thinking about it? Do you have a dam champion, someone in your organization, he, she, they, who will support you financially and administratively? Do you have a dam champion? Do you know what you have now? And do you know what your future state might be? And goodness gracious, do you have good old metadata around your assets? I sure hope so. If not, take some steps back. Do you know your metadata? Do you know your workflow? Do you have other potential integrations? We have definitely seen in the last 10 something years where there is more things where it's not just the dam, it's other stuff. So when you're thinking about getting a business case or selecting, it may be touching 4 or 5 other things. Do you know your rights management? Do you have rights associated with these things? Are there compliance issues? Do you know what the good UX and UI looks like? I have seen recently in the last 2 years where people have made dam selections and the cutting decision was the UX UI. So that is important. But then administrative, again, do you have good governance? We believe you do, right? Because we love governance. Do you know the costs of going forward and not going forward? Your inaction and your action. And then the lovely 3 letters ROI. Do you know what your potential return on investment might be? And then finally, in total, do you have a business case? That's a lot. We can project this back out in a document for you, but that's a lot.
I'm going to add to that, even though it's a lot. So I think I just want to point out that the key to this process is not starting with the features that you're looking for. It's starting with your user's needs. So if you just start with features, you're not going to be able to choose a dam because so many of them have overlapping features. You really need to understand your users, talk to your stakeholders, gather input, Who's going to create, manage, and use and request assets? Think about not just your archives or your marketing, but legal. Do they have thoughts about, how this content is used? Your IT department, do they have restrictions on what can be used in your environment? Creative teams just learn what's working, what's not working, and where the pain points are. And if you can do that, you're 10 steps ahead. And then document all that, and that's what you're going to share with the vendors. So I think that should give people a good sense of where to start. It's a lot.
Top
Uh,
tier users. Oh my golly.
yeah,
It
but
seems
that
obvious, but
it's
sometimes you forget.
yeah, and we're going to say that about 50 times in the next 45 minutes. Okay, should we jump? There's a lot of talk or chatter in the Q&A and then also in the chat about those who have dams but are reevaluating. The question here is, should we pursue the current solution or look for other solutions starting over?
Mm, good question.
Um, do you want to jump in or you want me to
Sure.
give it a
Well,
shot?
we can tag team.
Yeah.
So the question again is, so what about those who are reevaluating? So someone who has a dam, but they're reevaluating their situation after X amount of years. Should we pursue the current solution that is not meeting needs or look for other solutions, starting over essentially? So essentially starting from zero. So in any good assessment, you have to assess what you have now. Is it working or not? So it is part of it in some ways, but definitely I've seen situations of both sides where they did include when they went for an RFI, which is a request for information. Sometimes it precedes an RFP, which is the actual proposal. Sometimes you include it in there just to see, okay, I've had you for 5 years. Are there features you haven't told me about? Have things changed-ish? So you do want to take a look at them. But when you do a true good assessment, you might realize that like internally, your organization, your needs have changed, and what you have present doesn't fit those anymore. And that's
Mhm.
why you do need to do the assessment to look at what you have, but then also look at anything outside of the box. What do you
Yeah,
think?
I would say that once you've put once again, user needs, stakeholder input, all of that together, you've created either some requirements, a list of requirements, or some use cases, or both, however you want to approach that. Um, Now you can put those in front of the vendors.
Yeah.
And I think it's fair to say, ask your current vendor to respond, as John said with the RFI, see what they can do. Maybe there's functionality there you didn't know you
Mhm.
was available. And I think you have to also consider what it's going to cost to move to that new system. Is there greater benefit in staying or moving?
Mhm.
And that's going to be a big assessment because undertaking an implementation project, selection and implementation, that's a big ask of your teams and also the work you're doing.
Mhm.
So I would say definitely see what your vendor can do, but also reach out to new vendors with your use cases and see how they
And
can address them.
another point to that starting over, don't think of it as starting over because if you've done a good damn job, pardon the pun, we will do lots of puns today. Amy and I love a good pun. It's not necessarily starting over because if you've done a good damn job, you've got good metadata with you, you have got good workflow, you have good process. So you're not necessarily starting over. It's just you're going to be changing potentially some of the technology. But remember the pillars of the people, process, technology. You've done a good damn job already. Some of that stuff is with you. So you're not, you know, going forward. Awesome. All right. Which question is next? You're on mute.
I sure am. Should we ask, let's ask from the folks who sent in questions ahead of time, where do I go to find information about vendors?
Oh, goodness. So we get this a lot because, I mean, many of us are in the sort of research fields of like, where do I go? How do I start finding things? There are a lot of places you can start looking now. Shameless plug for Google. Well done. You can start typing things in there and see what you get back. But, shameless plug, obviously, I mean, you should hire consultants. Shameless plug. We had to say it, get it out of the way. But seriously, there are many things you can do. So I've got about 8 different ideas where you can start looking. Number one, There are review sites out there. So G2, Trustpilot, Capterra, these are places you can go. You can see what people are reviewing and see what they're saying about DAM solutions. There's also research firms out there that, pay. You need to pay for these things to see what they're saying. But, Gartner, Forrester, Real Story Group, they have annual, quarterly reports. You can check in on the DAM industry, see what's going on. You can go to the vendor websites themselves, go and take a look at them. You might have heard something about one of the DAM vendors, maybe someone on your team from a previous place has heard something. So go check out there. And when you're there, look at maybe some of their demos. Definitely look at case studies. I'm a big believer in the case study. Go look what other people have done
Mm.
with the DAM. Now, obviously, industry events. You should check out the Henry Stewart events. There's a few of them every year. London in June, New York in October, Australia in November, new one, and Los Angeles in March. There are other events in the world too that have digital asset management as a feature, but definitely if you are in one of those cities or if you do have travel budget with your organization, those are great because you get a few hundred other folks like you in the same room. And then networking, the power of things like LinkedIn and industry peers. You know what? If you have a good LinkedIn network, put out the question. Say, hey, peeps, hey, my friends in the marketing, distribution, whatever space you're in, and ask some questions and see what people come back with. That's the whole point of these social sites like a LinkedIn. So, and I'm a big believer in industry peers helping each other out. So try that out. And then lastly, yes, consultancies. You could hire someone to help you along this journey. And again, shameless plug. We are here for that. But yes, consultants do help, but won't say too much about there. But there are lots of different places to go, information about the vendors. So yeah, there you go.
Ooh, I have nothing to add to that. That was very thorough. Um, I have a question for you, John, another one. How this one's tricky. How would you phrase a segment of an RFP dealing with how a vendor supports various new embedded metadata features, especially in regards to C2PA
Oh, cool.
slash content credentials, which is very new.
That's great. I'm going to read that again. I see it on the screen here. So how would you phrase a segment of an RP dealing with how a vendor supports new? Well, okay. So A, how would you phrase it? You need to put that's a use case. So
Mhm.
Amy and I will be talking about use cases and the importance of those throughout today's webinar. But that is a use case. And I can tell you, well done for this question and talking about content authenticity. It is fairly new. Now, and not everyone is aware of this. Recently, we were at Henry Stewart LA, and I think at the closing session it was, and I mentioned about C2PA, and not very many hands went up. It is new, it's happening, but it is going to become more of the rigor or the norm going forward. So, to that point for this question, yeah, some of the vendors might be on top of it, they may not. If that is important to you, I would definitely highlight that, maybe prioritize that in a ranking methodology to sort of say, hey, C2PA is important to me. How do you solve those solutions? And that might tip the balance potentially in how you are selecting or evaluating and selecting new technology. But thank you for shouting C2PA out because, again, it's happening. See a lot of people talk about it. More need to understand it. But that's a use case that I would prioritize. Amy?
Again, that sounds great. I'll answer a question now. One of the questions that we got ahead of the call was at an initial vendor demo, what is your top question to ask and why? And I think, here we go again. My top question is, can you walk me through how your system handles this specific use case? So come with a plan, come with your use cases,
Yeah.
and make that vendor address them. Some other things I'll say is if you're doing these initial vendor demos, I look at these as pre-RFP. These are before you've gathered all of your information. So you want to make sure that you have some stakeholders in the room just so they can see what's going on, but you don't need to have too many, right? Because you're going to show these vendors, the short list of vendors to those stakeholders later on. So I again, it's about your user scenarios or use cases, your user needs, And then the only thing, a sort of pro tip is don't let the vendor hijack the session with a slide deck. Give them 15 minutes to use their slide deck and then make them show you in the live system your your how your that system addresses your needs. You want to see live workflows. You want to see that this tool fits your needs. And it doesn't just do what they say on paper. And I think that's the huge thing that we can't stress enough is see if the systems can do what you need.
Mhm.
And uh, just, keep on top of the agenda. Don't let the vendors turn it into their agenda. That would be
Mhm.
my last piece of advice. John, do you have anything to add?
No, it's you said it. It's the use cases.
Yeah.
Come into those meetings. This is not grab a cup of coffee and a donut and listen and watch, though it could be, but come in with those use cases. Yes, there is the OOTB, the out of the box sometimes, which they show you and they should, but show me here are my 5 things. As the previous question about content authenticity, I want to know how you would solve my problems in your DAM. So yeah, the use cases are incredibly important. And for those of you who haven't figured, or you're sort of working on that process right now, start building your use cases. And if you're thinking, I don't know if I have those, oh, you do. All those people who complain are saying, oh, I can't find, or oh, it takes 3 hours to do X, Y, and Z, then those are some of your use cases. So good question. I like that one.
Yeah, okay. So the next question is a long one. We'll drop this into the chat. It's about well, I'll read it. I work at a cultural heritage institution. After months of dam demos, we found one that resonated for the collections department. Due to the institution's greater interest in wanting to create a new custom website through a web developer vendor, the conversation shifted towards a custom dam instead of the one we found previously. I would like to advocate for a dedicated um, I dam software system, such as the one we initially found. What points can I bring up to advocate for this, since this dam is also an excellent archival preservation repository? Are there pros and cons to a custom dam that I should be considering? So I'll start, and
That's
I'll
long.
say, first of
That's a
all,
big question.
it is, right? I'll say first of all that 9 times out of 10, I'm going to say buy over build. It just doesn't, from a financial perspective, it often doesn't make sense to build in-house. So I totally understand the appeal of building something, but I think IT needs to understand that the DAB isn't just another back-end system to this website. It's a specialized tool that supports metadata use, workflows, preservation. Um, I don't know how you tell your IT department this, but they probably lack domain expertise. Um, they may think they understand the needs, but they probably don't understand metadata standards, digital preservation, rights management, that kind of thing. So, I don't know that I would put that in their hands. As I mentioned earlier, I think there's a higher long-term cost. Custom builds seem cheaper, but often costs over time just skyrocket with dev work, maintenance, technical debt. All of those things are costly and are often not considered when you start building a system. I think also, it takes a vendor dam can be live in months, probably 6 to 12 months. If you're building your own system, you're going to have a delayed impact. The system isn't going to be ready for prime time for a while. It's going to take a while to build a system that meets all of your users' requirements. I think there's also a key issue here is security and compliance. Dam vendors are always being questioned about their security. They align with security standards. They comply with things like GDPR. They're already doing all the security work that you need. Why build that? That's going to take a long time to build. And then I'll say, you're going to lose momentum. You've done all this work to select something. It sounds like you've got your stakeholders aligned on the system. If you stop, you you're going to lose any progress you've made, and you're going to lose trust. You've put these people through this process, and now they're like, why did I do all this work? And you will, they may lose trust in this process. I just think that a commercial dam can integrate with a website. They do it all the time, and that you don't need to reinvent the wheel. I hope that helps. John, do you have anything to add?
Yeah, I mean, I mean, 20 something years of doing this. I've seen that the build buy discussion, not too much as of late, but there's only, I think in my career, I can count less than five. I think it's probably two or three where the build was the right decision. And it was only because it was a very specific asset class and it was very particular for a specific industry, et cetera, et cetera. So I definitely, if it's the build buy, I'm on the buy side. And one of the other issues that is in the build is that it's not only just the trust, but the investment of time and money put in. But if you have one of those devs, or maybe plural devs, what if they leave? There goes that brain source, that brain trust, right? So sometimes if you build in the knowledge that's inside the house, if they leave, there goes that brain trust. So yeah, I haven't heard this a lot recently-ish. But again, I think only two or three in my career where I've ever seen that build did work, and it was for a very specific reason. So buy is good.
All right. So I'm gonna ask one more question that came in ahead of the webinar, and that's around this concept of multi-tenancy. So the question is, we are potentially looking at DAM for more than one service. Each have different purposes and are used by separate teams. Would you recommend having separate instances for each service, or is it feasible for departments to share one? What needs to be taken into consideration? So I have, again, lots of thoughts. I can start,
Mm.
John, and then if you want to jump in.
Yeah,
Um,
go for it. Good question.
so I think I would say that many dams make this very easy to do. So it's all about making sure that they have robust permissioning in the system, flexible metadata, and configurable workflows. So, for instance, you can set up permissions in some systems so that users don't even know that there are users from another department working in there, and that the users in two departments don't see each other's assets unless you want them to. And I think there are benefits to that, and I'll talk about that in a second. But it's very, if you have a dam manager, very important, who oversees all of the users and can manage those different tendencies. And I'm saying that in quotes because I think we use that term slightly wrong in this area, but we'll use it for now.
Mhm.
So I definitely think there is a benefit. I again, like I said about building, having two dams that run in parallel is costly and I think unnecessary. Um, a shared system can also, you can have these separate workspaces, but you're also going to benefit from a central governance model. So you can all work together to make sure that the system's working the way it should, and you're making decisions together on taxonomy and things like that. And then, I think the biggest advantage is, of course, cross-departmental reuse. And so you get a couple of departments in there, suddenly you can add some more, and suddenly your entire enterprise is using the dam together. So one of the things I want to also highlight in that is that if you've got marketing department, you got your social media, you got your branding, administration, a lot of those organizational units need access to other people's content, especially marketing and social media. If you have an archives and your archives is hosting its digital content in the dam, now that marketing department can come find historic material and really highlight that material in their campaigns. And so a real benefit there. Suddenly, everything in the organization is searchable. Everything that you want to be cross-searchable is searchable. The other benefit is if you have an archive in the dam and you've got your all these departments that are building or creating content, that's an easy way to just move that content into the archives by a simple change of status of the content instead of having to go through the process of formally moving content between departments and boxes and that kind of thing. So that's, I think the key is understanding where your teams need to align and where they need to diverge, and then making sure you choose a platform that can support those without compromising their control over their content.
Mhm. I'm a big believer in less is more. If you have one dam, that's probably going to be able to do it. And I think to one of the earlier questions about, doing research, I think a lot of people who've been on maybe a dam system for 6, 8, 10 plus years, to which we do see in the industry, Amy and I have both seen those instances, they're not aware that in fact, some of the more sort of modern dams and modern functionality will allow for several instances where it's a portal or something. So you don't need multiple dams. Definitely you can do this in other ways, and the functionality exists. In 2025, that is something there for you. So if you do have if you are potentially on a legacy system and you were thinking, but I would love to do those things, that is available for you. So, okay, so I see a question here that's about aligned entities. I'm going to try this one. The question is, do we find industry-aligned entities to consider their MAM adoptions, or has the landscape changed so much that it's not relevant? I'm going to say that again for myself. Do we find industry-aligned entities to consider their MAM adoptions or DAM adoptions? MAM and DAM, similar. One's more media intense than the other. Or is it not relevant? So if I understand the question correctly, and Amy, please chime in. What I'm understanding is sometimes when people are in that selection process, you've been looking at dams, maybe you're down to 5, 3, 4, somewhere in there, but then you're like, I wonder if there's anyone like me. If you are in the CPG space, let's go find some other CPG clients. If you're in financial services, maybe you should go talk to another bank. If you are in healthcare, if you are in whatever industry, the broadcast media space, should I find some other people like me? I do think there is benefit to that, to go find others like you, because they'll probably have similar use cases. They'll probably have similar issues to deal with. So yes, I do think finding aligned entities is a good idea. Now, on the flip side of that, I also think it's interesting to see other people use similar dams or MAMs in different industries, because it gives you a different perspective on other issues that you may not even realize you have. So I'm going to answer yes to both of those. Definitely. If you're in a certain industry, I would definitely want to find other people like me. And any of the dam vendors that you are looking at, they should be able to provide you a list of similar entities. And if they're doing their job well, that dam vendor will probably then say, and here are their contacts, go connect with them. But on the other flip side, I would love to know what other people outside of my industry are doing as well. It could be inspiration. It could give me some new ideas. So good question. I've seen that one before. So good one.
All right, I have a question I'll take the first stab at, and that is, how do I ensure that the selection process reflects the needs of my stakeholders? Remember that how we said use cases earlier? So start by involving the right people. So again, that includes all those folks that we talked about earlier. And that's going to be people that use the system all the time, or people who influence the system in some way. People who give you money, people who support it technically. Again, the legal folks, anyone that's involved in the system, it's good to get their perspective. From there, you want to, so how do you do that? You're gonna do that through interviews, most likely. You gather that input through interviews, maybe surveys, although I think surveys are less effective. You could do workshops, and then you turn that feedback into a prioritized user use cases, real life use cases. And when you write a use case, we should maybe talk about that a little bit. When you write a use case, you want to write it from the perspective of a real life person. So you're not going to say John Smith, but you're going to say his title. The marketing director needs to do X because Y, and explain the steps that they need to take to do that work. And which you should know because you've interviewed them and they've explained what either their pain point is or what their wish list is, so that you can describe it in this use case that you can then share with the vendor. These are going to guide that evaluation that the vendors do and that you do against the vendors, and ensure that you're testing vendors again on how the dam will be used and not just their functionality. When you get to the demos, invite your stakeholders and have them give them a rubric that they can score against, because they're going to see whether the system is addressing their use case. And if they score high, you've got the right vendor in the room. And then throughout this process, make sure that your decisions are backed by your strategic goal. Whether that's is your goal improving access? Is it preserving assets? Is it streamlining workflows? Make sure that the decisions are reflecting that main strategic goal or goals. And that way you're not, again, just picking a system, you're building buy-in and setting your team up for success. You want to add anything there, John?
Excellent. I mean, we said we were going to repeat a few things, and we did this at the beginning, but yeah, use cases, your users, talk to them. Sometimes we have to remind ourselves, like the good, the bads, and the others, but communicate with your users. They'll help influence. And if you do a good process of communication and having a good rubric when you're doing the scoring, the needs of your stakeholders will be met. So communication is fantastic. More communication, more documentation. We love documentation. Come on.
Yeah.
Right? All right.
We have another question in the Q&A. And this is, as part of the selection process, do you think there are benefits from dam free trials? Are there any risks to consider? Do you want to start, John? I have some thoughts.
Dam-free trials. I'm seeing the question here. Do you think there are benefits from dam-free trials? Are there any risks to consider? Do you have an opinion?
I do.
Go for
Oh,
it. I have.
I always have an opinion. Yeah, so what I would say to that is if you can get a free trial of a dam, that's fantastic. I'd go ahead and play with it, see if it does what you need it to do. But I would also do it in a very scoped way. So
Correct.
you have your use cases, you have your requirements, test that system against those that content that you've already done the hard work of collecting. Uh,
Mhm.
a lot of times people get a proof of concept system, which is basically a free trial after you've gone through the RFP process and you've winnowed your list down to one or maybe two. But you never go into that and just click around. You want to build a script. You want to figure out what your goals are for this work, and because otherwise you're just going to click around. You're not going to really capture information that's going to help you make a decision. So build some scripts. What do your users need to do? If you're just a basic user, do you need to just download stuff and search? Then have those users search and download. If you're a more advanced user, maybe you're a content creator, then upload some content, create some metadata, and see how that works. Uh, if you need to be able to share, how does the system allow you to share? Can it limit sharing to a time period? Do you need a password? There's all kinds of things. Just sharing is can be a really interesting function in dams. And then I think uh, And then I think for the dam admins, that's where those folks really need to dig in and figure out if the system can support the more complex functionality that you're looking for. Are there risks? I would say the risk for me is just a time waster. If you're not going in with a plan, then you're not going to be able to gather that information in a really structured way.
I would agree. It's that plan and documentation. So if you are going to do some free trials, just make you're consistent. As Amy said, get a script and just make sure you're doing that with each one. Now,
Mhm.
where I have seen the free trials or the proof of concept that Amy referred to work well is sometimes if you do a selection, you're down to 5, 3, and then you're down to 2. Sometimes a proof of concept could be the one decision maker for you where it could tip you to make that decision. So you have 2 instances of a dam, same assets, you go in and you sort of hit it for like 2 weeks, test it, play with it, see what happens. With that sort of a proof of concept, it could help you get to that. This is the one that we will choose. So I have seen that work well. But again, if you're going to do free trials at the beginning, just make sure you're consistent, it's documented, there's a script, and you follow it. And yeah, that risk of because you can you could have fun with this, right, Amy? Like you could just keep going and going. It's like wet. That's been a day. Too much time. No, but good question. Good question.
Mhm. All right.
On their toes
So
today.
what's that?
Everyone's on their toes. I like this.
Yeah, this is great. I got another question for you. John, how about this one? Well, let's address the elephant in the room. How important is hiring a consultant? So we have a very strong list of what we need in a dam. We have a good sense of which dam might work for us, and we intend to talk with customers of those dams to get their feedback. So really, John, how important is it to hire a consultant?
And this is a question we receive a lot here, at AVP, Amy, you and your career as well, you've seen these questions come up. How important is it? I mean, is it a trick question? Uh, I want to say the best answer is always the honest answer. And I can, over 20 years of doing this, where I've seen clients and heard clients say, hiring a consultant was the best thing we ever did because they're busy. And what the consultant is able to provide is not only just subject matter expertise, but they have that objectivity that they come in. They know the market, they know the industry, they can come in, they can do all the work, but they have that third party, that sort of objectivity around it to say, I'm agnostic. 30 something dams in the space that we're sort of looking at on a regular basis at AVP, we're agnostic. They're all great for each one of you at certain places in certain times. But those industry best practices, that objectivity is the experience that a consultant will have. That is an important, good reason to hire a consultant. Amy, would you?
Yes, I have a couple of additions to that. I think it's important to not think about selection in a vacuum. Selection is just the very first step, well, or even the second or third step in a long process that doesn't end once you implement the system. So there are things, if you're thinking about the selection process, first of all, consultants can write RFPs. We do it
Yeah.
all the time. They're not very fun, but you can do them. And if you have someone who does them all the time, we know what the vendors are looking for. So that's something to consider. As John said, neutrality, objectivity. We can do facilitation of demos. We can help score. We can do stakeholder alignment. A lot of times when you're doing discovery, if the person asking the questions is from the organization, people are going to answer honestly. If you've got your hand in the honey and somebody else, wants that, they may feel hesitant to try to grab it from you, or try to tell you why they don't think what you're doing is the right approach. Whatever. We aren't. You're not going to hurt our feelings, right? We can take it and we can turn, pain points into requirements,
Yeah.
and we won't, I promise we won't get emotional about it. And then finally, once you've made your selection, you're doing implementation, you need to have probably some sort of integration strategy. Are you
Mhm.
prepared to do that yourself? And then also, this is something that you're, like I said, going to be doing for a long time. You need to put a governance plan into place for long-term governance. Do you know how to do that? Do you need somebody to help you put that into place? So those are some of the reasons that I would say a consultant is important.
And we get that question all the time, and you see it at conferences, you see it on Discord, you see it on the different sort of, the internal or the external sort of social channels. So this is something that, it's not a trick question. It's a good thing to hire a consultant at the right time in many different ways.
Yeah,
Good questions today. Oh my.
I know they are good. Here's another one. Um, I can jump in, or John, if you want to start. What's a realistic selection timeline for a mid-sized organization, and what should we prepare
Oh,
for post-selection?
great. Not to speak as a consultant, it depends. Wow, what's a realistic implementation timeline? Oh, golly. I mean, I have seen I have seen anything from 4 to 6 months. I have seen a year plus. It really depends. It depends. This isn't an it depends. I mean, how well organized is the house before you get started? Do
Yeah.
did you do all your homework? Are you ready to go? Some people are, and some people aren't, and that's okay. But the more organized you are, the better it shall be. Do you know what you really want? Again, are those things like the business case? It really depends. Our encouragement would be for those of you who are potentially thinking and sort of projecting in their timelines, and well done for thinking of a project timeline, is get prepared. The better you are prepared with documentation, use cases, needs, all those things, and always expect that there will be hiccups along the way.
Mhm.
20 plus years doing this, and Amy, you have stories like I do. It's never linear. There's always a few little lovely hiccups along the way, system outages. What do you mean the metadata was lost when we were migrating from one to another? So realism is also a hard pill to swallow sometimes. It may just take a little bit longer than you think. But that's
Yeah, so yeah, absolutely. Totally agree. I think you're right on the mark. For AVP, when we do RFP selection, RFP driven selection processes, we say that it's going to take about 5 months. And that's moving at a pretty rapid pace. So if you don't have the capacity to move that quickly, I would plan for something that takes a little longer.
Mhm.
That is going to there are a lot of components to selection. So you might do preliminary or initial vendor demos. So that's you got to organize those, you got to schedule your team, you got to schedule the vendors, you got to come up with your use cases. Like that takes time. And then if you want to do an RFI, you need to write your use cases, you need to figure out what it is. RFIs are much more lightweight, but that may take some time. If you are instead going to do an RFP, in any case, you have to do this discovery to learn what people need. So discovery is, again, organizing, scheduling, identifying people. It's coming up with the questions. It's having the meetings, and then analyzing and documenting the results. That is not a fast process. And then there is the distribution of the RFP. There's the analysis of the RFP. There's the vendor demos based on your selection of your shorter list from the RFP. And then there is potentially a proof of concept, which is sort of that opportunity to get into the system and test it against use cases. If you don't want to do that fast, it's going to take you more than 6 months or more. If you want to do it with a consultant like AVP, we'll get it done in 5 months. And the reason for that is because we don't also have your day job, right? You have a day job that you need to focus on. We can come in and focus just on this. And so that's why we can do this as quickly as we can. 5 months may not sound quick, but it really is. As I said, we move very quickly. And then thinking about post-selection, I would say there are two things that you need to do. One is define what your MVP is. So an MVP, everybody has a different uh, the definition of that MVP. I go with minimally viable product.
Mhm.
So what does your phase one go live look like? What does it include? Are there integrations? Is it all of your metadata and assets from your old system? Is it some of them? Who are you going to onboard? You're not going to onboard everybody, right? Because that's a lot. So figuring out what that MVP looks like so you can go to the vendor and say, this is what success looks like for us. And then the other thing is an implementation plan. How are you going to do this? Who's going to clean up the metadata? who's going to make sure that rights information is correct? Who's going to make sure the assets and the metadata match up? So when you do that, who's going to do the migration? All of those kinds of questions need to be answered. And so, like I said earlier, selection is just the start of the process, and it kicks off a series of activities that involve or require some planning. So that would be my answer to that
One
question.
thing to add, two things to add, Amy, I had a situation once where at a conference met a lovely human being and they are looking for a dam. And I said, well, what's your timeline? And they said that they want to acquire, select, install, implement in 3 months. That's not going to happen. So again, potentially using consultants to give you that realistic perspective. It's like, that's not going to happen. Well
Mhm.
done. The other thing I want to make clear in that post-election world is the legal thing. And contracting is not as easy as, great, I love A, let's get you. Legal takes time. I don't know how everyone else's experience has been, but I can tell you from doing this, legal does take time. There is a lot of redlining, there's a lot of back and forth. It could be multilingual, it could be multi-region where you have to make sure where the server's sitting, etc. But legal takes time, and you just always put that into your timeline, that just allow for that time for both sides to agree on the documentation, and it doesn't always go as fast as we might expect it would. So legal's good. Good question.
Yeah. We're coming to the end of the questions that we got ahead of time. There's one more. So if people have questions, we still have 8 minutes and we're happy to keep answering them. So the question that hasn't been answered was asked in a different way earlier. So there are some things that I would add to the answer to this question that I didn't answer in the first one. And this is
Like,
going to make sense as soon as I ask it. For organizations with multiple brands or divisions, what should we be looking for in terms of multi-tenancy and permissions management? I have
oh,
some ideas. Do you want me to start, John? And then you
oh,
can
yeah, yeah.
jump in?
That sounds interesting. Okay.
Yeah. Okay. So I'm thinking about this from a requirements perspective. So you want a dam that can partition within a single system. So you can ask for that. You probably want a metadata field that defines all of the different departments. Like maybe you have 5 brands, so you'd have a brand metadata field with all of those different departments. And you also want to, when you're setting up your user permissions, make sure that you're grouping your users in the correct groups so that only group A sees group A's assets, group B sees group B's assets. So there, your requirement is robust user permissions. You want user permissions at the group level and at the individual level. You may need workflows that are specific to each group. So you want to make sure that you can have brand specific workflows. So that would be a question in a multi-tenant system. Can I have workflows that only one group can see? That's a good question. And then going back to not a requirement of the vendor, but a requirement of your organization is that governance plan, which is also going to include training. And so you may need to train different users in different ways. So that's just another thing to consider. Um, that's going to be particularly important if your different groups share taxonomies.
Mhm.
You may need training on how to use or interact with certain taxonomies. So those are the sort of details that come to mind for me uh,
Mhm.
with this question. Do you have any, John?
I love how you really took it some time to go through the user roles and permissions. Can't
Mhm.
speak enough about that. And again, this is for all of you who are looking to get and you're on that sort of journey now. This is some of the pre-homework you can do. You can actually start asking these questions internally about what does each brand need to see. More importantly, what do you not need to see? You might be a global organization that has language issues as well. That could also be some metadata concerns you can answer now, well beyond what happens afterwards. And I mean, I can't say enough about governance. And again, when do you do governance? Start now. There's no reason to wait till it goes live. You should be doing governance immediately. It'll, again, that governance council, that sort of process you're thinking about can really help the selection process because you're thinking holistically. And if it is multi-brand and tenancy, you're thinking differently going into it. So opportunities for pre-homework, we love that. We love homework.
I wondered John, if we should talk a little bit about what governance means, because
Oh,
I
we
think I think we throw that term around and people are like, "Mm?" So I'll start and you can probably come up with a better answer. But
love.
governance is really about thinking about how data is used and managed throughout the organization. So who's making decisions about taxonomies, metadata schemes, um, workflows, whatever it might be, data related. There's going to be levels of involvement. So there's usually a governing group that makes ultimate decisions. There's the group that's coming up with the recommendations, doing the hard work of figuring out what those governance regulations and rules should look like, and then sending that up to the steering committee or the administrative team that will put a stamp on those decisions. And then you have the folks who are actually just doing the work. And that governance, those documents, those materials, policies, whatever they may be, are going to really help drive what those folks on the ground are doing. And so having that structure in place is going to ensure that people know what to do, know who to ask if they don't know what to do, and um, understand what the approved processes are.
Mhm.
And I would say that's a nutshell review, answer. It's much more complicated than that, and I'm sure John, you can
But for those of you and who are on this webinar today thinking, oh yeah, governance, I should do it, do it. And one question we get asked a lot is, well, when should I start? Start now. Literally, this is something that can be done. And I like to think as governance as like risk management. You know, change will happen. We know change is going to happen. So what we have the the methodology and the controls behind the scenes that allow for good change to happen. As Amy said, metadata changes, workflow changes, upgrades, service outages, all these other things. Governance will help you. And I can tell you, 20 years doing this, the dams that do have governance perform far better than those who do not. And that's not necessarily a vendor selection thing. It is for you to do. So if you are not doing governance yet on this lovely Thursday, I would say, hey, let's start doing some governance. It's a good thing.
So we have 2 minutes left. I wonder, John, if we should just sort of give some final thoughts. Like what are the big takeaways from today? I was thinking something that we repeated over and over again is don't talk to vendors until you have your use cases, so that you know how to talk to them, what to talk to them about, so that you're leading the conversation and they're not. And that's the key. Use cases and requirements, documenting those, talking to your stakeholders, finding out what they like, what they don't like, and what they wish for. Those are the three key questions. Will help you understand how to select your dam.
Mhm. Do your homework, get a business case, communicate with your users. And when you are speaking to vendors, I always like to think sometimes that there's never too much. You can, follow a plan, don't get distracted. But when you are looking, ask as many questions as you can from them and get external support when needed. Sometimes you just need someone to help along in the process. Find others who are using those dams, maybe those who liked it and didn't. Sometimes vendors allow those things to be given out. That's on the vendor side. But just make sure you are prepared going through and get that business case. Again, we at AVP, we have some documentation that we're able to share out with you afterwards, but be prepared. Get that business case, start thinking about what you need and how you're going to get there. What a
I think that's it.
good
Uh,
questions today. Wow.
yeah, really good questions. And if you have further questions and we didn't answer them, feel free to reach out and we can do our best to get you an answer.
Yes.
Guys, thanks. Take
Thank
care.
you, everybody.
Bye-bye.